I know.
That's right. That's where all the good vibes are. It's just so beautiful day. You know what? I can talk loud if I need to. But then I was going to pass off.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
And why you're here?
My name is Sally Wiener, and I'm here to celebrate Flaco.
And have you seen Flaco?
Yeah, the first time I saw Flaco was right here.
Tell me about that.
I was walking back with my mom from a doctor's appointment, and we heard an owl, and someone pointed and showed us where it was, and I'd never seen an owl like that in this whole area at all. But I didn't know that much about birds, but I knew enough to know that bird wasn't from around here.
He is now, right?
Absolutely.
Can you just tell me your name and what you're doing here today?
Yeah.
Look at me.
Look at you. That feels better. My name's Keegan Delury. I'm actually from Vermont, not a New York City citizen. I first met Flaco soon after he was released from the zoo. I found him down at the Huddleston Arch, and I spent some time with him. And his whole story I've been following every day, keeping up to date on it via Twitter and or Instagram or the internet or different news sources, because I think his story just speaks a lot to, you know, self-resilience and reliance and freedom. And yeah, he's,
Have you seen Flaco in person often?
Yes, yeah. So I come down here regularly to visit my girlfriend, and one of the things I always say we have to do is we have to come to the park and we have to find Flaco.
Are you a birder or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love birding. I'm obsessed with birds and wildlife in general. I've done some work researching birds, and but Flaco was different.
What did Flaco represent to you?
Yeah, I mean, he represented freedom and triumphing over struggle and what it means to live life to its fullest, even if it means life is more dangerous. It's better to be free and wild than it is to be caged and live a long life.
And there's a proposal for a statue. Some people think a statue is appropriate. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's appropriate, and I'd love to see a statue so that other people could know his story and people could learn from his story and get what I got from Flaco. But I'd also like to see the most amount of money possible going into things like making sure buildings and windows are safer. So as much as a statue would be great.
How about zoos, really briefly? What about zoos? Where did Flaco escape from?
Yeah, zoos are a tough one. That's a struggle. I think they're really good for educating the public and making people fall in love with animals, but there's some creatures like owls that I'm not sure they belong in cages. I think there's a few animals, mainly birds especially, that perhaps should be left wild. That being said, zoos are great for educating the public.
Can you give your name and spell it again, please?
Yeah, Keegan Delury, Keegan. Last name Delury, Delurey.
Repeat that you just said, with strength and resilience.
Yeah, he proved to us all that with strength and resilience we can overcome anything and we can survive in this, difficult world if we just take a lesson from Flaco and be.
Yeah.
You're right there. Thank you so much.
Try to talk as loud as I can. Thank you so much for joining us today at Flaco's favorite oak tree here in Central Park. We're going to go ahead and pass off to open mic for anybody that would like to share a story about how Flaco impacted them. Heroic. One of my friends, Tasha, that lives in Dubai, holds a prayer circle every month, and she said that this passed hope and brought so many of us together. I mean, look at all the people here and tuning in. I mean, it's incredible. So I wanted to pass the mic.
Sticking out his tail. And I say this with love, he looked a bit like an oversized chicken. Curious and possibly tips lit up as they saw Flaco for the first time. We were asked how
we saw him take. Flaco emerged from the zoo into the unwelcoming environment of the city, frightened and alarmed. His ability to fly was limited. He exhausted himself flying short distances, and his landings were clumsy. We heard a crash of branches everywhere he went. And of course, he had never hunted before. We hoped he would be rescued quickly and uneventfully, but Flaco had other ideas, and he transformed himself into a wild bird before our eyes. First, he became more relaxed. He figured out where to roost to attract less attention from hawks, crows, and blue jays, so he could sleep during the day. At night, he practiced flying, and his skill in the air improved rapidly. After 7 days, when we thought he must be very hungry, he taught himself to hunt for the first time. I remember that night near Heckscher Ballfield's well. I watched him chase rats on the ground for more than half an hour. Then he abruptly stopped in a spot with taller grass, where I could not see his talons. When he picked up a huge rat in his beak, I was pleasantly surprised and proud. More hazardous for him. Ultimately, we couldn't celebrate Flaco's freedom without accepting that he alone decided where his own wings would take him. And watching him confidently soar from tall building to tall building downtown, on the Upper East Side, and in the Upper West Side, it was clear to us that he was right where he wanted to be. When we marked Flaco's first year of freedom just a month ago, I dared to hope that it was just the first of at least a few years. This act was renamed the Flaco Act. Giving his name to this important bill is just one of many things we can thank Flaco for. I thank him today, as I did every day I got to see him, for the joy, awe, and wonder he inspired in us throughout his journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We fell in love, remain in love, and find it very hard to think of him in the past tense. But I decided to write this poem. My husband and I were out of the city. We were driving back into the city, and I was looking at the tops of some buildings, and I felt like they were empty, and I wasn't sure why I felt that way. And then I realized it's because I've been so used to seeing the pictures and the videos of Flaco on top of buildings. It's called Flaco, A Celebration. The rooftops are empty, the railings are bare, and no graceful owl is seen cruising the air. There's no gentle hooting to soften the night, no gold brindled feathers to catch morning light. But Flaco was with us, a sudden surprise. Fresh out of his cage, he braved cold winter skies. From the trees, he looked down on this daunting new world, but he took it all on with wide wings unfurled. He spiraled the city, he'd dart and he'd spring. He could hunt like a pro and roost high as a king. He'd perk windswept ears, check out each sound he heard. He was curious, feisty, this beautiful bird. He'd puff out his chest, self-possessed and quite proud. Did he know that he played to a way-obsessed crowd? He had such a sweet face, and God knows he was smart. And those deep yellow eyes showed an innocent heart. So let's celebrate Flaco, the bird who flew free, and still see him perched on an old oaken tree.
Chorus. Sunday night, moon shining bright, getting ready for bed, hear a voice in my head, and I hear it again, bellowing, sounds like a hoop coming. Eurasian eagle owl, escaped from the zoo, and seen up and down, all over.
for any reason disclose your skin just water. No, eso no. I'm doing the Australian race because it's for me like a symbol. Like I couldn't do it in like the brown color that he is. But then
Can you tell me your name and look at me and spell your name, please?
Sure. Jake Salyers, Jakesalyers.
Okay.
So to part of that, Flaco was the most famous bird in the city, and I decided to kind of track down the people who really knew who he was and spent the most amount of time with him. I started looking for him like last October, right around the time that he left the park to go to the Lower East Side to find a mate, which he didn't. So I went out with some of the Flaco birders, like the people who were really into it, and went down the Lower East Side and looked for him unsuccessfully.
Now you're quite familiar with these passionate group of birders or new birders who followed him around. What characteristics would you say these folks have?
That's a good question. I think that they have somewhat of an obsessive tendency, maybe more passionate than obsessive, but like they were tenacious. They really just like went out there and looked for him every night. That was kind of the most surprising thing to me, was the consistency with which they were going out to find him and look for him. And then also on top of that, kind of the organization that came from this like network that evolved of all these people who were saying, we saw him here, we saw him there, we're going to meet there. That's also a good question. I think that it has a lot to do with the pandemic. I think that a lot of people spend a lot of time trapped in their homes. And so the idea of this creature getting out of the zoo, getting free from, his cage literally, and that we all kind of metaphorically felt. So I saw that a lot in the people who I followed, that they were, kind of like they felt like a personal connection to him on that level.
Tell me what you thought when you first saw Flaco. What was it like? I remember I saw Flaco the day after he escaped. Tell me what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I was right here, and I remember walking up and seeing a crowd, nothing like this, but like a big crowd of people who were, watching him, and all the tripods set up, and like that was the first time I really understood the effect he had on people. To see this giant crowd, and then to see people on bikes and walking by, recognizing who he was and being excited that he was back in the park.